Hello, everybody, and welcome to another, I was going to say Sick Windows meetup, but this is the Harbor community meeting. So this is so awesome, like when you come from back to backs. So as always, this is a recorded meeting, so please adhere to the CNCF code of conduct. All right, a couple of big news. You've all seen the announcements. Harbor has graduated in CNCF. We have the official announcement coming up that was provided as a press release by the Cloud Native Foundation. This is huge for Harbor. There's a link here on the community meeting notes. In addition to that, if you go to CNCF Landscape, now we are the 11th project. So this is, I always love actually seeing this. Every now and then, I come over here and I click on project and I click on graduate. I say, you know what, this is awesome. We're right here at the end. And more importantly, I have another project coming up here in incubating. So me and Jonas get double fist bumps. We'll talk about that in another time. All right, so this is good for us. It's gonna only accelerate our community, our engagement. It's gonna make it easier for us to basically portray Harbor as a stable, reliable, open source project that's fully vetted by CNCF. It has a stamp of approval. It's graduated. Go ahead and put it in production with complete confidence. And if you want a support agreement, there are certain commercial entities that are providing that. All right, in the community meeting today, we talked a little bit about the Systick image scanner. The demo gods were not super friendly, so that's why I'm not gonna show it right now. But essentially, we have a link here, and Nestor did a great job talking about that. But the Systick scanner basically works very similarly to how the Aqua, Anchor, and DoSec scanner work. So it gives you the ability to leverage Systick and their full-blown security solution to be able to assess the security posture of your images and define if they're free from vulnerabilities. So super great. They basically get plugged in as a pluggable scanner in Harbor. You can select them. You can even make them the default for any specific projects. And as your schedule dictates or as your policy dictates, Systick scanner will be called. It will basically run through the motions of cracking open the image, doing the static analysis, and providing the vulnerability feed back to Harbor, so Harbor can actuate on that and basically dictate the end user policy. Like, for example, if you say, I don't want to pull an image that has a high level of security vulnerability, it will not because of data you get from Systick. And that, super great. We love working with more and more vendors, and we want to make sure that every security vendor in the cloud native space has an adapter for Harbor. This is exactly what we build Harbor for. Any questions on that? All right, moving on. Non-blocking GC. So I want to show a couple of things here really quickly. So when we actually introduced Harbor 2.0, one of the big things that we did is when you look at garbage collection, in the past, we actually depended on the Docker distribution to do garbage collection. So Docker distribution tracked all the layers, all the images, all of the dependencies, and it did all of the legwork. As a result of that, if you wanted to GC, you had basically put your repository and suspend a lot of operations like pushing of images. That really posed downtime to a lot of our users, which is unacceptable for large environments or environments with heavy usage. So instead, what we did with 2.0, we actually piecemeal this. We did it in 2 steps. Step 1 was no longer rely on Docker to track all the layers and dependencies. We can do that in the Harbor database now. So now the Harbor database becomes a source of truth for all your images. A net effect of that was that now we can actually show you untagged images. So for example, I'm going to pick someone's thing right now. So I can go into someone's repository and I can see here we have an image that was tagged as latest, but we can remove the tag or add the tag, and that will not remove the image from Harbor. That image remains in Harbor because we've tracked all the dependencies and all of the state here, and we know that you have an artifact that you push into Harbor. Whether you tagged it or not is irrelevant. That artifact belongs in Harbor. So that was step 1. Use the database to track all of those things. Step 2 was, let's go to garbage collection now. And with 2.1 that will ship end of August, we will enable you to run GC without any downtime because now Harbor has an accurate blueprint of all your images and their dependencies, we can just delete anything that's not referenced. And more importantly, if you want a similar experience to previous releases of Harbor, you can say, if you have an artifact that's untagged, go ahead and garbage collect it. It's a choice now. If you wanted to eliminate images that you don't have a tag for, either because you don't want them anymore or because they shouldn't be there. Be aware that you can push and pull an image whether they have a tag or not. You can pull it and push it based on the digest. So tag is not necessary for pushing or pulling an image, but it's end user choice to decide how they want to deal with untagged artifacts. Great work. We had a short demo of that today. It's work in progress. It's not complete yet, but it should be very soon. And the last thing is, and if you go to YouTube and view the community meeting from today, Alvaro showed the demo of OIDC to do automatic onboarding. So the way I'm going to show you guys here is, because I don't have Alvaro's environment, this is also a work in progress. I'm going to actually go to the documentation. So I'm going to go to our docs, and I'm going to search for OIDC, showcasing our super powerful documentations here. And if you were to define OIDC, one of the things that you see here is our configuration for IDC. You see auth mode, who's the provider, your endpoints, the client ID, secret name, and scope. All of those things are great. What a lot of users have told us is when you onboard a new user into Harbor, they also get to pick a Harbor identity, your username in Harbor. And the username may be in conflict with what their OIDC credentials looks like. So can you make this easier? So two new lines were added here. The first line is basically being able to leverage an OIDC scope for the username in Harbor and filling it in for someone. So you can basically put in the field email, and when a new user is onboarded that's basically federated to an OIDC identity, federated through our IDC to an external identity, it will pick their email address and it will give you by default that's the username in Harbor. You can choose to change it, but by default it will show up there. That way that user knows, hey, I've logged into Harbor, my identity was federated, it came from GitHub or LDAP or Active Directory, and now it's going to basically tell me that, hey, we advise you to use your username as being the email address that you had in OIDC. Second knob that is provided to administrators is not only to put the email address as the automatic onboarding alias for username in Harbor, but also enforce it, as in don't allow the user to change it. So at that point, it becomes an automatic onboarding, and whatever identity or whatever field you push from OIDC will also become the Harbor identity. So if you don't want to offer them the choice, you can make email the unique identifier in Harbor and make that the way that this user gets onboarded. So super simple, makes it very easy for an enterprise administrator, an enterprise operator of Harbor to dictate what the identity looks like when using OIDC Federation. So that work is ongoing, should make it in 2.1. The PR is already out. That's it. Those are the new enhancements that are happening in Harbor, new work that's going on. The team is really heads down on basically enabling everything else like P2P and operator and getting proxy caching capabilities ready. So we didn't have a lot of updates this week, but we had 3 demos here that kind of move the needle in a variety of areas. Tianon, any questions, concerns, anything we can help you with?
No, this is all pretty cool. I had a question around multiple scanners. Is that something that's supported today? I remember you talked about it at KubeCon, but I can't remember if it's currently supported or if that's still a future roadmap item.
So community supported, yes. So you can have multiple scanners. So I can go here to, this is a big selling point for Harbor. So if you go here to Harbor Wiki and open up the architecture page for Harbor, one of the things you notice is that, this is a huge part of our architecture is the fact that you have multiple scan providers. So we started down this journey back. I talked about this concept of an interrogation service probably January of 2019, and we kicked off the work by Agua taking kind of the lead on that after KubeCon EU in May, June of 2019. And then in version 1.10, which shipped in December of 2019, we released full-blown support for anyone to bring their own scanner into Harbor, provided they had a provider for it. So we have Claire, Trivi, Anchor Engine and Enterprise, and Dusek were the first 4 scanners, and now Systick is developing one.
Right. I'm familiar with all that. I was curious about the support for multiple scanners at the same time.
Oh no! Now I hear what you say. Like being able in a single project to run more than one scanner. Not
Yeah,
yet.
to be
No, yeah,
Claire
no.
and Trivi and Systick.
So nothing prevents us from enabling that beyond like really testing through this and figuring out if there's any edge cases. We just haven't had the time. We haven't prioritized that just because it hasn't been asked enough compared to some of the other things we've been hearing. So we just haven't prioritized it. I think, down the line, I think this is definitely possible that we're going to allow you to do that. Today, since all of our scanners are singular in focus, they're all static analysis scanners, it doesn't make a lot of sense to do it. But as customers come and create another scanner that's basically a license checking or library CMDB updater, or basically doing something with service management or something else, then the scanners now will have a wide variety of data distribution. They're not just static analysis. So then it becomes more of a motivating factor for us to enable multiple scanners to run on a project in a serial or parallel basis.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm thinking that's likely not going to happen in 2020, being honest here. Maybe 2021, but in 2020, because we have a full-blown schedule now for 2.1 and 2.2. Like 2.1, we're concentrating on edge and image distribution and all of those capabilities. And 2.2, we're actually going to revamp this layer: identity providers, authentication, authorization. We're going to change a lot of these things. And we haven't finalized the proposal yet, but if you see today, when you go to a project, one of the things that you see here is membership, right? All of them ACOs and RBAC for a project is tied to a project. That's not really right. But that also means your robot accounts are tied to a project. We want to abstract all of that and create a logical abstraction around identity and access management, and then be able to ACO that into a project. So for example, you can create a virtual group that includes Tianon, me, and Kenny, and say, you guys are project admins, and your project admins are across these 5 projects. And boom, immediately you have access to all projects. That way you don't have to go to each individual project and define who your access permissions are. You can do that at a higher level. Right. Same thing for robot accounts. I want to create, like today, if you create 2 robot accounts on 2 projects, they have different credentials. That kills your CI/CD. We want to be able to have global robot accounts. We'll call them service accounts that can actually be used and maybe be able to tweak their privileges. The other thing is today, as part of that work, today a lot of our membership has static permissions: project admin, master, developer, guest, limited guest. This is great, right? But it's not flexible. If someone wanted to use OPA to define what the role memberships look like and permissions, you can't do that today. So today you go over here, you type user permissions, for example, and it gives you a nice view of what your user permissions are. What if we allowed someone to define where the checkboxes go? We're going to look into all of those things for 2.2 and figure out, we might not do them all for 2.2, but we're going to figure out what are the highest value things. Number 1 priority is abstract the user management from the projects and be able to do a tied in and do like almost a foreign key constraint in the database world, like be able to associate them with the project, but have them independently managed. And then the second thing is figure out how do we define what these static user permissions look like, and can you do something better? Those are high-level goals for 2.2. So now that took us all the way to the end of the year, right?
Yeah, that's cool. Thanks. Appreciate the high-level overview.
Yeah, and one of the things we did, and maybe I should add it to the. I'm gonna go back and reshare my screen again. I don't know why we didn't add it in the community meeting, but maybe we'll do it on. I'll add a note here so we can add it next time. So next one will be on the 15th. Is we have a roadmap. So I'm going to talk about it now again, but definitely chat about that next time as well. So if I come over here and go to our community meeting, sorry, our Harbor repo, not it's not in the community repo. One of the things we have here is a roadmap.md. The roadmap has a lot of things that haven't changed. We have a project board. Here's how you actually can file new issues in the roadmap using a project proposal. And all those things are laid out here, and you can read about it. But we updated this in maybe about a week and a half ago to talk about the high-level themes of where we're going as a project, right? Security analysis, Systick is here, image distribution, the things we're working on right now, performance and reliability with non-blocking GC, and then again, more image distribution things. And then we talk about, what we're gonna do about day one and day two operations to make it better using our operator partner. And then we're gonna make some changes around OCI artifacts and being able to enable OCI artifacts to also bring their own metadata. And then service accounts and RBAC and differentiated access permissions. That's the things I talked about right now. So that basically takes us all the way to the end of the year. And then after that, we start talking about, better observability or improving that and backup and restore and IPv6 and more things. So you're going to see this list getting more and more populated as you have more things that are coming up in Harbor. And I'll cover some of those next week as well.
Thanks. That's awesome.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Everybody have a great rest of the day and week. Short week for the US-based folks, so that's awesome. And we'll see you all in a couple of weeks. Thank you all.
Have a good
Bye.
one. Bye.
Yeah.